And whether it's the money, the promises, or whatever, it gets him.
How you feel about these rumors surrounding, Diddy and TD Jakes?
Man, what I think about it is this, when I grew up in the church, the sinners was not supposed to have the same atmosphere with the saints. You have to be able to separate the two. So I'm looking at him as a saint going to a party that ain't nothing but sin, drinking, maybe fornication, man on man, woman on woman, he on she.
I would have been swallowed up. Have you ever been swallowed up?
That dude was possessed with some kind of demon, man. He was possessed with some kind of demon. Want to be in all this red, this dark rooms with the music blasting. It had to be a certain temperature. A certain type of music for the vibration they were saying. Come on, bro.
You better sit down for this one, because Gene Deal just dropped a bombshell. As the former bodyguard to hip-hop mogul Diddy, Gene wasn't some guy standing in the background. He was in the room where it all happened. From wild parties to secret meetings, Gene saw everything behind the glitz of the bad boy empire. And now, he's pulling back the curtain on a shocking connection no one saw coming. The real reason Bishop TD Jakes suddenly stepped down. On the surface, Jakes' retirement looked classy, respectful, even holy. But according to Gene, this wasn't just a man of God stepping away. It was a strategic move tied to something way darker. Something that leads directly back to Diddy, you. See, Diddy and Bishop Jakes weren't just acquaintances. They were tight. Over the years, the two were photographed side by side, sharing stages and publicly supporting one another. But behind the prayers and posed smiles, Gene hints there was something else going on. He's not just throwing around wild claims. This man has been carrying secrets from the darkest corners of the industry for decades, and now he's connecting dots between Diddy's intimidating influence and Jakes' sudden exit. From cash favors and hush-hush deals to powerful people staying silent out of fear, Gene paints a picture of a world where spiritual leaders were drawn into something far from holy. And if what he's saying is true, TD Jakes wasn't just around for Sunday service, he was deep in the mix.
Maybe that'll save some souls. I know he got a contract with Revolt, so I'm just like, it's just real strange that he would be found at any kind of Diddy party or any kind of place with Diddy unless it's in a business atmosphere. So now what he's doing is he's making the Christians look real bad right about now.
And you've been to these parties, right?
Oh yeah, I was there when he was doing the white parties in the Hamptons and the whole 9 yards. So I know what goes on at the parties. If, they probably got a little bit more freakier, as time went on, because they got to the point whereas that they didn't even care.
Diddy didn't just open doors for Bishop TD Jakes. He handed him the keys to an empire. Money, visibility, cultural clout. Diddy gave it all, and Jakes didn't just take it, he embraced it. For a man who stood in front of thousands preaching about redemption and morality, the hypocrisy is chilling. This wasn't a pastor caught in the crossfire. This was a man fully invested in the power Diddy offered, even if it meant looking the other way when things got dark. Because behind those velvet ropes and flashing lights were parties, secrets, and behavior that couldn't survive the light of day, and Jakes knew it. This wasn't just a friendship, it was an alignment, a strategic bond between power and influence. While Diddy gave him a platform outside the pulpit, Jakes gave something far more valuable in return: his silence, his reputation, and the weight of his name. You don't stand that close to the fire without feeling the heat. And Gene Deal says Jakes didn't just feel it, he chose it. In his tell-all revelations, Gene didn't hold back. He said what most insiders are too scared to even whisper. And now, the world's finally listening.
It used to be secretly, where people used to go to, separate rooms and different rooms, and they wasn't doing that out in the public, but now they don't care. Men kissing men and all this other it's crazy.
In a bombshell revelation that's sending shockwaves through both the entertainment and religious worlds, Gene Deal didn't just hint, he named names. And one of those names was none other than Bishop T.D. Jakes. According to Gene, this wasn't a case of a respected church leader wandering into the wrong crowd. Jakes was right there in the thick of it, not confused or misled, but fully aware and fully involved in the dark, twisted world Diddy kept hidden behind his empire's polished surface. What Gene described wasn't just reckless celebrity behavior, it was pure evil. He spoke of parties drenched in manipulation and control, where young, vulnerable girls were passed around like props, and where the air itself felt heavy with spiritual darkness. Drugs, power plays, and an atmosphere that blurred the lines between reality and ritual. This wasn't indulgence, it was corruption on a whole other level. And through it all, Jakes wasn't praying, he was participating.
If he's going, we know he's going to the Diddy parties, and I know that it's, I know what usually happens at the Diddy party, or what we told us happened at the Diddy parties. Maybe he needs to see it for himself, man. Maybe he needs to go there and really be involved in some things that could help save some individuals while they going to those parties. Or maybe he just going to, man, it's hard to even talk about. Why would you find a religious man, when you know that the saints supposed to separate themselves from the sinners, and why would a religious man like himself be at a party which ain't nothing but sin that's going on, bro? Whether it's drinking, maybe fornicating, maybe, like I said, men on men, women on women. It's hard to put in perspective unless he's involving himself what is actually going on at the parties.
And according to Gene Deal, T.D. Jakes was right there, in those same dark, disturbing rooms, standing shoulder to shoulder with one of the most allegedly dangerous and corrupt figures in hip-hop. This wasn't some innocent man of God who stumbled into the wrong place. No, Gene says Jakes knew exactly what was going on. He felt the energy, he saw what was happening to the young, vulnerable women being exploited, and he stayed. Not only did he stay, he allegedly worked with Diddy, collaborating behind the scenes while upholding a public image of spiritual authority and moral leadership. To Gene, this wasn't just a lapse in judgment, it was a betrayal of the deepest kind, betrayal of his faith, betrayal of the millions who trusted his teachings, and betrayal of every victim who suffered while men like T.D. Jakes chose silence over truth. Because if Bishop Jakes was truly the man he claimed to be, he never would have been at those parties in the first place. But here's the kicker. Why did T.D. Jakes suddenly and quietly walk away from his role as one of the most powerful pastors in America? If Gene Deal is telling the truth, the answer might be buried deep in Diddy's world of influence, secrets, and silence. For those who haven't been paying attention, T.D. Jakes' name has officially entered the legal firestorm surrounding Sean Diddy Combs. The once untouchable pastor from Dallas, known for his global reach and leadership at the Potter's House, is now named in a federal lawsuit, pulling him from the pulpit straight into controversy. And this lawsuit, it wasn't filed by just anyone. It came from a music producer with direct ties to Diddy. According to the complaint, Diddy allegedly used his relationship with Jakes as a PR shield, hoping the pastor's credibility would clean up his image. In the wake of Cassie Ventura's explosive claims of abuse and control. Because make no mistake, the accusations against Diddy weren't just damaging, they were horrifying.
Crazy, man. But to get into this lawsuit, right, Cassie, she testified that Diddy would force male escorts to urinate in her mouth during freakouts.
My man, that's a touchy and difficult subject when you're a man and you have daughters. You understand? And that's why we as men need to play a prominent part in our daughters' lives, because you get men like this that's got this corrupt and devious minds that they don't respect womanhood. You understand? That's some nasty, perverted things that you want to have somebody urinate in the mouth of somebody who gonna be talking to you in your face, who gonna be kissing on you, who gonna be eating food with you. What kind of deviant and crazy mind you have to have somebody do that to somebody that you care about, you supposed to care about, that you supposed to love, man. Something is sick about that, brother. You can't tell me that that's some kind of fetish. You know what I'm saying? He didn't outdid R. Kelly with that right there, bro, when I heard that. So that's an effed up subject and situation, man, to even imagine that you got somebody doing that to somebody that you supposed to care about and you supposed to be in a relationship with.
If you've been following the growing storm around Diddy, you already know Cassie's lawsuit was just the beginning. The former longtime partner of Sean Diddy Combs rocked the industry when she accused him of serious misconduct, claims that included physical abuse, control, and manipulation. Her story sent shockwaves through both the entertainment world and the court of public opinion, dragging secrets out of the shadows. But now, things are getting even messier. Because according to newly surfaced allegations, Diddy wasn't just preparing to fight legal battles, he was assembling a shield, and at the center of that shield, none other than Bishop T.D. Jakes. The lawsuit suggests Diddy saw Jakes, a man with an unshakable reputation and millions of devoted followers, as a key player in a broader damage control strategy. Whether it was about optics, trust, or pure influence, Diddy allegedly leaned on his relationship with Jakes to preserve his image. Meanwhile, Diddy's legal team came out swinging, slamming the federal raids on his homes as excessive and unwarranted. But behind those press statements, another narrative was emerging. A narrative of backroom alliances, image control, and reputational chess. Suddenly, this wasn't just about Diddy. It was about everyone orbiting his power, including Jakes. Then came the bombshell. In December 2023, the Dallas Morning News reported that unverified accusations were exploding online, claiming Bishop Jakes had attended and even hosted some of Diddy's now infamous parties. There was no hard proof, no confirmed evidence, just digital whispers that ignited into a full-blown firestorm. But when your name carries the kind of weight Jakes's does, even a rumor can become a reckoning. Instead of hiding, he addressed it, straight from the pulpit during a Christmas Eve service, a sermon that doubled as a public defense. The worst that could happen if it were all true, he said, is I'd have to sincerely repent. But I ain't got to repent for this. To some, that was a bold man of faith standing firm in his truth. To others, it sounded like someone who knew just how deep these allegations were cutting. Because this wasn't just about scandal. It was about credibility. T.D. Jakes isn't some small-town preacher. He's the founder of the Potter's House, a spiritual empire with 30,000 plus members and global influence. His reach extended far, beyond Dallas, into Hollywood, into politics, and now, possibly, into a federal investigation. It's important to understand, Jakes and Diddy weren't strangers. They were close. Over the years, we've seen the photos, the videos, the hugs, the prayers, the stage appearances. This wasn't a once-a-year connection. It was a deep, consistent public bond. In fact, in 2021, their alliance reached new heights when Jakes launched a sermon series on Diddy's own cable network, Revolt. That move raised serious eyebrows. Why was a pastor using a hip-hop platform better known for nightlife than theology? Many now say it was the clearest sign yet. Their worlds had merged. But fast forward to now, and everything is falling apart. Diddy recently sold his remaining stake in Revolt Media and stepped down as chairman, a quiet exit during a very loud crisis. And with lawsuits closing in, everyone close to him is now under scrutiny. Jakes, especially, is feeling the heat, and the bishop is not staying silent. He's fighting back, in court. His legal team has filed action in the Northern District of California to force YouTube and Google to unmask 4 anonymous accounts. Why? Because those channels have been posting viral content accusing Jakes of attending the same scandalous parties linked to Diddy. The lawsuit says the videos are AI-generated misinformation, violating YouTube's policies. The accounts, allegedly based in Kenya, Pakistan, South Africa, and the Philippines, have helped spread the narrative that Jakes isn't as clean as he seems. But here's the real question. Is this about protecting truth or burying it? Some say Jakes is just trying to stop the lies. Others believe he's scrambling to stop exposure. Because if even a fraction of these allegations turn out to be true, it could destroy the spotless public image he's built over decades. The sermons, the power, the credibility, all of it, gone. And now, instead of standing firm and confronting the claims head-on, it looks like Jakes is choosing legal firepower over public transparency. One thing is clear. This is no longer just Diddy's scandal. It's a wildfire, and it's creeping right through the doors of the church. Is TD Jakes running from the truth, or just running out of time? When a public figure goes after the platforms instead of the facts, to many, that's not a defense. It's a cover-up. And right now, with the pressure mounting in Diddy's legal saga and accusations flying like wildfire, Bishop TD Jakes is quietly stepping back. But make no mistake, the world is watching. Just weeks after his name began surfacing in lawsuits tied to Diddy, lawsuits full of disturbing allegations, Bishop Jakes announced his exit. He's stepping down from the leadership of the Potter's House, the church he built from the ground up in 1996. And while he framed it as a legacy moment, an emotional, spiritual passing of the torch to his daughter Sarah Jakes Roberts and her husband Toure Roberts, the timing is impossible to ignore. This is legacy, he told the congregation, tears in his eyes. Not because they're kin, but because they're the kind. It sounded holy, poetic, purposeful. But outside those church walls, many saw something else entirely, an exit strategy. On social media, people weren't holding back. One person on X wrote, "Was this guy Diddy's bodyguard? Maybe that priest needs to be questioned in the trial." To critics, this wasn't divine timing, it was strategic retreat. Because when you've been linked to the kind of parties, lawsuits, and whispers that threaten to tear down your entire reputation, stepping down doesn't look like peace. It looks like panic. Sarah and Toure are being celebrated by some as the next generation of leadership. But others are asking the real question. Did Jakes step away out of calling or out of fear? Let's not forget, his name didn't start trending because of a sermon. It started trending after Gene Deal, Diddy's former bodyguard, named him, directly, as someone who was allegedly present during the darkest moments of Diddy's hidden world. Then came the rumors, the lawsuits, the resurfaced photos, the online accusations. And now, with Diddy's trial heating up and disturbing revelations surfacing weekly, the fear is Jakes' name is going to show up again. And this time, with receipts. That long friendship with Diddy, the Revolt TV sermons, the appearances at industry parties. People aren't forgetting. In fact, many believe he resigned not to pass the torch, but to protect his image before it collapses. Because if his name is officially tied to these federal investigations, it won't just be his public reputation on the line. It'll be his entire congregation. And for a man who built an empire on trust, faith, and respect, That kind of fall would be devastating. Now here's the twist. When Jakes made the big announcement, he didn't mention Diddy. He didn't mention the lawsuits. He didn't even hint at the media firestorm waiting outside the church doors. Instead, he leaned into something far more sympathetic: his health. Jakes told the church he recently had a health scare, serious enough to make him rethink his priorities. He spoke about the toll decades of ministry had taken on his body. He framed it as a decision made out of wisdom, not fear. And to the untrained eye, it worked. He's 67. He's traveled the world, built ministries, carried souls. It's believable, but if you listen closely, the timing tells a different story. This so-called health awakening didn't happen last year. It didn't come after a busy season or during peacetime. It came right after the internet started talking, right after Gene Deal spoke out, right after the pictures resurfaced, right after the digital whispers turned into full-blown conversations. And those conversations started sounding a lot like accusations. Let's be real. People have seen this playbook before. When public figures face scandal, they don't always confess. They deflect. They don't say, "I'm stepping down because I'm afraid of what's coming." They say, "I'm stepping down to rest, to heal, to reflect." It's the same soft exit strategy we've seen time and time again. But the internet? It doesn't forget. And the people watching closely, they're connecting dots. This isn't about wellness. It's about reputation management. It's about getting ahead of a storm that still hasn't hit full force. Because when those lawsuits dig deeper, when more names come out, and when witnesses start testifying, TD Jakes does not want to be standing at the center of it all. He wants to be gone, wrapped in sympathy, hidden behind a wall of wellness, and far, far from the chaos. But here's the truth. Walking away doesn't erase the facts. And if Jakes really has something to hide, stepping down won't save him.